Hey everybody, I'm doing a charity thing this afternoon, so I won't be able to meet you live. So I'm just gonna post this video real quick. Okay, so for today, we're continuing our Reagan stuff. Let's see what Reagan stuff we didn't cover. I think we're gonna do military stuff today. All right, um, so let's talk Reagan doctrine. All right, so the next big number, I think it's what, M, I think? I don't remember. So the Reagan doctrine. The Reagan doctrine essentially is, as it says right here, it's the US policy of arming anti-communist movements in order to counter the Soviet Union. Prior to Reagan, the United States had been invading countries, right? And we invaded Vietnam, we invaded Korea, right? We invaded a couple of other smaller ones, right? In the case of like Guatemala and a couple others. And we had invaded them, and Reagan is saying, we're not going to send American soldiers anymore. What we're going to do is we're going to send money, weapons, and support to these militias. And so Ronald Reagan is going to do that all through the 1980s. In fact, all of these countries are going to be, all the countries in red are going to be countries that the United States is going to send money and weapons to. In all of these countries over all through the 1980s. So quite a few, quite a bit actually. And this is a big change. Ronald Reagan does not want American soldiers abroad. Vietnam was a terrible nightmare. A lot of Americans got killed, and a lot of Americans were protesting and stuff. So in your notes, define Reagan doctrine, and then make a line saying how what the policy was before and how the policy changed, right? And then let's get our best example here. Do I have it in here? Oh, I didn't put it in there. Okay. All right. So the best example of the Reagan doctrine is going to be what this picture right here. And the best example, this is the next line down, same number, is the Soviet-Afghan War. The Soviet-Afghan War. This is the Soviet Union invading Afghanistan. And the United States gave money, weapons. We sent like military people over there to like train them. So we weren't fighting at all, but we were training them on how to do this. And we trained these guys on how to like make bombs, how to set bombs, how to do terrorist activity, how to do all sorts of like fighting, right? We put them in like fighting drills and stuff. We gave them all sorts of weapons. This group includes one Osama bin Laden, and also this group will become the Taliban eventually. So a lot of the Al Qaeda fighters and the Taliban fighters that show up in the 90s were all people who were trained by the United States in the 80s. And yeah, that's going to be a problem, right? We taught them how to commit terrorism. We taught them how to commit terrorism and stuff, and well, they committed terrorism. So, um, so what do we think about this policy, right? On one side, the good and the bad about this policy. The good part about this policy is that American soldiers aren't dying, right? You're saving American lives. It's also cheaper. It's cheaper than sending American lives over there, right? The bad side of the policy is that you're giving money and weapons and power to people who may end up being really bad, right? And I think the Taliban and Al Qaeda and all the terrorist groups that show up later are the best example of that. But they're not the only example. There's a lot of really, really bad examples, like in Nicaragua and Guatemala and Libya, and like there's a lot. There's quite a few really bad examples that were basically, fueling a lot of bad people. So that's a real problem. Okay. The next number down is so big number N is going to be massive buildup of the U.S. military at this time period, right? Even while Reagan is saving money by funding all these groups, right? He's also increasing military spending a lot, right? Now, One of the biggest increases is what we call Star Wars, and it's not the Star Wars you like. It's not the lightsabers. It's Star Wars as in this. And what it is uh, it's a missile tracking program, right? Where if the bad guy launches a missile, we, bounce a beam off of the satellites, we locate the missile, then we shoot another missile and we hit theirs. Um, it's supposed to be a missile defense shield, is what we call it, a missile defense shield. The problem is that A, it's super, 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 super expensive, and B, and perhaps more problematic, is it doesn't work. So, yeah, we never actually got it to work, but this is kind of the holy grail, right? Because if we can get this to work, then the Soviets will never be able to blow us up again. Um, we spent a ton of money on the military in the 1980s, just a ton. And you can see how the spending goes here, right? Korean War, Vietnam War, and this is Reagan right here. Reagan had a theory that if we spend a ton of money on the military and we put more ships in the sea and more planes in the air and more bases around the world, and we just increase and increase and increase and increase and make the most really big, that the Soviet Union will try to keep up with us, and it'll kind of like cause them because they won't be able to keep up. That's the theory. Um, the Soviet Union does collapse in 1991. It is not clear how much that collapse is due to American spending, because at a certain point, the Soviet Union just couldn't do it and just stopped, right? Probably more important to the fall of the Soviet Union is the Soviet-Afghan War. This turns into a nasty, nasty, nasty war that lasts for more than a decade and kills a lot of Soviets. So, all right. Uh, what else do we want to do here? We can talk space for a moment. Let's talk space. All right, so let's do some space stuff. We introduced our space shuttle last time. By 1983, we're going to get the first woman in space, the first American woman in space. The Russians had already sent up a woman, so this is our next number down, obviously. Her name is Sally Ride. She's pretty cool. She's a pretty interesting lady. Um, one of the issues that she faces like sexism in the field and stuff. And NASA was this like boys club where almost everybody who worked at NASA was a man, and men just don't think about problems the same way that women think about, right? A lot of times, and so. Um, we've mentioned this in class before, but I don't know if the online people have talked about this at all, is that women's health is lags really, really far behind men's health in a lot of ways. And Sally Ride's rise to prominence is kind of an example of some of the issues of sexism that she has to deal with. Um, NASA wouldn't send a woman into space because they were scared that the zero gravity was going to like screw up their organs and stuff. Like they wouldn't be able to have babies. Like women couldn't have a baby if she had been in zero G. Um, we, of course, today know that that's just absurd and that's not how organs work. But in the day, the sexism was so strong and there were so few women who were scientists and mathematicians that when a man said, oh, zero G will just make it so her uterus stops working. And then all the other men just kind of nodded and said, oh, yeah, that sounds about right. It's not known at the time, but she actually becomes the first LGBT person in space. She keeps it quiet at the time. She's in the closet, but she is a lesbian. In fact, there's her wife right here. Sally Ride died a couple years ago. She died like 7 or 8 years ago, and it was revealed that she had this a wife and stuff. So Sally Ride's kind of interesting, but space is, we got 2 other things here. Unfortunately, in 1986, we're going to get the Challenger explosion. And the Challenger was one of the space shuttles, and it was supposed to be going up. One of the people on here, oh, I forget which one it is. I think she was a school teacher, and she was supposed to be the first non-astronaut, I think it was her, the first non-astronaut to go into space. And this was supposed to be the dawning of, space travel for everybody, right? That everyone was going to be able to go into space. Unfortunately, the Challenger had some mechanical issues as it started to go up. The heat shield on the bottom of the shuttle was catching air, and it got too much friction, and it got hot and it blew up. So it killed everyone on there. Um, this was a big problem, and it was a big tragedy, and people my age remember this distinctly. I remember I was in like second grade and watching this on the TV, and then it exploded, and we didn't know what it was, and I distinctly remember that it made me late for pizza day, and that was really traumatic for me. I love pizza, and I don't like being late for it. So, you know, all right. Anyway, um, the last thing we'll mention about space is, oh, I guess nothing. We'll leave it there. That's good enough. That's good enough. All right. So I will talk to you all later. This is the last note. This is the last day for notes for Q4N1, right? So go ahead and submit them on Canvas and get your points. All right. See you later.